The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, the Ancient Greek Gods, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, Alex and Sean are back together at last to review Fort from Leader Games. Then the Dukes take a look back at their review of Horrified in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Spooks of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And me, your spooky guide to the underworld, Alex.
Can I ask something before I give the episode number and title?
Sure.
Why did you say Alex and Sean? Why did you put yourself first? Wouldn't you just be magnanimous and put me first for once?
What do you mean for once? What are you talking about for once?
For once, Alex.
I didn't even think about it when I was typing it, but I think
Exactly.
it is so very indicative of your personality that is the exact thing you noticed immediately.
No, it's indicative of your personality that you didn't think about it as you typed it.
Also true. Both things are true.
Anyway, this is episode 236, No Ghouls Allowed, which is a very clever title, thanks to Jimmy DM90. Of course, we're talking about Fort, and there's kind of the no girls allowed thing, although there are girls in Fort, so that's good. But also we're talking about Horrified, so there's the ghouls reference. So yeah, I like that. Good job, Jimmy.
And I think it's also, and I don't remember if he mentioned this directly in the guild notes, but also a direct reference maybe to Abby not being on this episode.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know.
Well, there you,
it may
well,
not
there you
be.
Go. So we get help naming all of our episodes with our amazing Board Game Geek guilds, guild number 2008. In fact, we've got some runners up that we will give you at the end of the episode, but good job there, Jimmy. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Well, Sean, it has been a busy couple of weeks. One of the things that kept me busy was I was down in Tampa with Abby, my wife. We were exploring that area to see if that would make sense as a place to live. Also hung around with my folks, played a bunch of games, played some more Orchard, which I think I mentioned on the last episode, played a ton of The Crew. Oh man, my family loved The Crew. Abby loved The Crew. My parents loved The Crew. They want me to bring that one at Christmas. That game was super popular. But I did, in the meantime, Sean, ask the guild, hey, where should we move to? Because a week from when this episode drops, I will be in Nashville touring around and doing some scouting there. We're driving down after work on Friday and then spending the rest of the weekend down in Nashville. That is the leading vote getter in the Where Should Abby and I Move poll on the guild. Got 28.6% of the votes. Runner-up, tie, Raleigh-Durham, and St. Louis to a house. So staying in St. Louis but moving into a house. In a distant fourth place, not distant, one vote off, Tampa, and then one vote below that was somewhere else. Several suggestions on the guild, many of them being Oregon, Pacific Northwest. It's an area we've talked about, but I think housing prices around, say, Portland or Seattle, a little dicey. It can be a little bit cloudy up in that part of the world. I may be overstating it. We certainly have a ton of friends up there, but I don't think it's somewhere we would necessarily go. BJ suggested Louisiana. That's not happening. Jesse Black suggested Kansas City, Missouri, referencing the excellent board game community, great sports, tons of great food places. I've been through Kansas City. Certainly seemed like a cool enough town, though I think it has the same kind of weather issues that this has been a gloomy week in St. Louis in terms of the weather. And it was a good reminder of, hey, we probably need to move on out. We had another suggestion for Huntsville, Alabama from some listeners. Tons of suggestions. Thanks to the guild for jumping in and providing some feedback. No decisions made at this point. Probably won't know until closer to the end of the year, but that's one thing that happened. Sean, the other big thing that happened is I went in to get my 2013 Hyundai Sonata serviced at a dealership literally yesterday. And it was going to be about $1,200 in repairs, fresh brakes, and new tires, and all sorts of fun stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to save that $1,200 by buying a new car instead.
Okay.
So I was one of those suckers who goes to the dealership for a recall and service and then ends up leaving with a new car. So I have a new 2021 Hyundai Sonata sitting parked out front, which is a lovely car, but I'm feeling a bit like a tool.
Huh. All right. Well, congrats.
Thanks.
Good job.
Why is that's been the reaction for it's like, oh yeah, congrats on your car. I don't know why that's a congratulations thing. People buy cars all the time.
Okay, never mind. I withdraw my congratulations.
No, I'm actually just curious. Like it's been the react. I mentioned this to a client on a call today, and the reaction was, oh yeah, congrats. I was like, I mean, I guess like it's not like you're graduating from something. You're just getting a car.
Okay. Well, never mind. I apologize.
Well, no, I'd like an explanation.
I have no explanation. It's just something I hear people do. So,
No, I'm just trying to think. I'm thinking a little deeper here, Sean. I don't know what to say. Anyway. Yeah. So those are the big things going on in my world. Travel and buying a new car, and apparently not receiving compliments very well. Sean, how have you been? What have you been up to? What's are we Dukes of Diet updating? Are we another update? What are we?
No, doing good. So I hit 239 the other day, but it was short-lived. I'm back up to 241, but I have this theory. About weight loss that once you've hit a certain weight, you've sort of worn in the path to that weight. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because like every time I've like gone up a little bit, it seems a little bit easier to go back down eventually. So like just variances in day-to-day stuff, or like I notice if I eat red meat, it may stick around a little bit longer. That sounds kind of gross. But anyway, no, I'm doing good. I have a Freddy's cup here, Alex, because I had Freddy's tonight for dinner.
Ooh.
But I had it was wrapped in lettuce. Freddy's is a steak burger chain. I don't know what areas it's in, but there's
Freddy's this far out here in Missouri, though I will say there's far better options for custard. It's one of the only options you have in Albuquerque for a good frozen custard. But out here in St. Louis, it is second tier, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not like the custard's never a big draw for me anyway. But so yeah, I think doing good. I really got to start working out again. Like I think that's something that's really gonna put me over the top, or put me under the bottom, I suppose. But there's just something about working out at home. Like by the time I come home, I'm like done. Like I'm just done. Whereas when I was going to the gym, pre-COVID, it was easy for me to pack a bag. If I said this before, am I just repeating myself? But it was easy for me to pack a bag. I'm done with work. I go to the gym real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Then I go home and I can relax. But as soon as I come through the door, I'm just done. And I'm not a morning workout person. Tried that. Just not a thing I can do. So I don't know. I think that needs to change. Yeah, that needs to change. But all right.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad things are going at least half decently.
No, I think it's fine. I'm on the right trajectory, I think. So.
Cool. Well, very good. Well, Sean, let's jump in and talk about some games.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your recent plays list.
Look at that.
It's looking pretty empty. But I will say, you were recently introduced to a game that, this has happened with some crossover with Slay the Spire. This is further afield from board games than Slay the Spire is from this space. But the game that I have been obsessed with, and you are just getting started on the journey of, is Hades. And can you tell me about your Hades experience so far, Sean?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. So it's another of those roguelike games, Slay the Spire, where you're trying to advance as far as you can before your inevitable death. Slay the Spire was really good, and it's board game adjacent because it's really a digital card game. Hades has that same concept where you're trying to advance. You're going on these dungeon runs, for lack of a better word, and then you're going to die. Until you don't, but you're dying, you're getting, marginal improvements, advantages, things like that. And it's more of a Diablo style game. So you're in full control of this character and attacking with different types of weapons and, there's some interesting decision points because you choose which way you go, less so than Slay the Spire. Like Slay the Spire has all of these branching paths that you take. Here, there's less of the branching, but still, I think so far somewhat important. I'm pretty good at Slay the Spire. There's a lot more levers to pull in Hades, I think. And so it's a little overwhelming at first, to be completely honest, but it's got really cool art. You're basically playing the son of Hades, this demigod that is trying to escape from Tartarus, or escape from Hades.
Escape from the underworld as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really cool. Like graphics are really good. There's a bit of a storyline so far that that's coming across. So really enjoying it. I've only been playing it for 2 nights now. What I will say, different than you, Alex, is I don't think it quite gripped me like Slay the Spire gripped me. Like Slay the Spire made me stop playing Magic Arena for like a good solid month. I'm doing a couple runs on Hades and then I'm back to grinding Magic Arena. So not that it's bad. But yeah, I think it's really good. I am enjoying it. Just it didn't, the card game aspect of Slay the Spire, I think, is what I really enjoyed.
I think as you discover the depths of the game a little bit more, there's a chance Hades could grip you a little bit more. So to give some additional context, I'm going to try and avoid spoilers because I'm further ahead in the game than you are, and there's so much of this that's a joy to uncover. But there are multiple weapons you have at your disposal that act in different ways. Bow and arrow, sword, shield, all sorts of different funky things that come about. There are different deities that you'll run into with blessings, and the blessings they offer are different each time and affect, for instance, Ares has an effect called Doom, where if you hit with, an attack or a special and then back off, it will do Doom damage about a second later. So kind of a delayed bit of damage that comes in. Dionysus gives boons that include Hangover as an effect, which is basically this constant drip of damage. You have another one that gives you Deflect. Athena gives you the ability to deflect projectiles and deflect opponents' attacks if you time it correctly. And the boons themselves will affect you in different ways. There are decision points with things you can buy along the way with currency that only lasts you through that specific run. And you will see that there are different versions of bosses. There are different, because just in talking to you, you haven't. If you've encountered the first boss, I'm not sure.
I have not.
Yeah. So just getting past that will feel like a huge accomplishment, and that's nowhere near the end of the game. Like Tartarus is just the first big world in what is several other worlds to come. So there's a ton to this game. I've sunk in a good amount of time at this point, and I'm nowhere close to unlocking all of its little secrets and different levers and other ways you can affect the run that you haven't seen, and I don't want to spoil. But there's so many different ways to play this game. It's so good. The voice acting's great. It's beautifully presented. Music's awesome in the game. I adore Hades. I've really liked it. So I'd give that one a strong recommendation, but it's not as close to, say, board and card games as Slay the Spire is.
Right. So, but no, I'm enjoying it, and I'll probably do a couple runs when we're done here tonight, but then I'll also probably play a couple games of Magic. I will say that I was playing a lot of Standard, the constructed Standard on Magic, and then the format's there's been this big upheaval, but I've been doing a lot of the drafting format of the Zendikar Rising format, which is really incredible. It's a really great limited environment. So yeah, that's really it. Board game wise, it's been pretty rough. I played some Scythe online last night with Ellie, Andy, and Mitch. But there hasn't been a lot of board game plays around here.
Sean, who won that Scythe game?
Nobody won. Although we all agreed that I was going to win, except Ellie. Ellie was the holdout. Andy was too tired, and so we had to cut it early. Just for reference, in terms of coins, which are a point unto themselves, I had like 24 coins and like the next person was at 12. I had I had 3 stars. Someone else had 4 stars, but I was about to get 2 more stars pretty quickly. It's possible that I think Ellie was going to trigger the end game, but I was going to be way too ahead. So I'm pretty sure I won or would have won.
Asterisk.
Well, that's the sad thing, but I'm pretty sure. I can spot where game's going pretty quickly with Scythe, and I was doing well.
I don't know if I trust your assessment on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fair. I wasn't there. In any case, so that's what Sean has been playing. I have a number of new plays, but I'm only going to talk about 2 because I'm generous like that. I'm respectful of your time and our listeners' time, Sean.
Are you though?
I don't know, maybe. So game I have played recently, scooped this up at Miniature Market, Super Skill Pinnball 4K. So we were talking a bit ago about video games. This is taking a pinball experience and converting it into a tabletop form. This game comes with 4 different pinball tables, quote unquote. At its core, it's a roll and write-esque game. You each have your own pinball table. 2 dice are rolled, and you're going to pick one of those dice and move your pinball, if it's up at the top and not on a flipper, down to a lower area, or if it's on a bumper between bumpers. Or if it's on a flipper, you get to launch it upward at a target. It's super simple in that way, right? Roll 2 dice, move your thing using one of those dice. If you ever have to move it down to an area and there's no spaces to cross off, so for instance, your flippers have a bunch of different boxes to cross off. If you ever have to cross off a box and don't have the box to cross off, your thing is as if your pinball slipped through the middle and your round is over. You play 3 rounds. The rounds are asymmetric in the sense that, let's say, like when Abby and I were playing, in the first round, her first round ended 2 turns before mine did. But we just keep rolling the dice and playing, and she uses those dice for her second round, and I continue playing on my first round. So much like, say, Tapestry, where the game can end at different times for different players, that's how this game works. It is a really interesting implementation, Sean, because you have the backboard of the pinball table, you have the pinball table itself, and then you have these little half-disc pinball tokens, which are really nice quality, that you slide around the board. One issue I ran into is that it did tend to smear some of the dry erase marker you're writing on the pinball board itself if you didn't slide properly. But a really, really cool implementation. And we only played the very basic table, Carnival. There's a fantasy-themed table, there's a hacking-themed table, and there's a disco-themed table, which all kind of increase in complexity in how they work. But the Carnival one, super interesting. And again, feels like what you would do if you were trying to take pinball and put it in a board game experience. It definitely captures that really well. So if you're a pinball fanatic, I think this one's a no-brainer. I think you're absolutely going to love it. It gives you that combo-y feel. If you just enjoy roll and writes, this one would be worth giving a look too. Abby enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I'm over the moon, but worth trying out some of the other tables. We messed up on our first game. A key rule that we figured out about halfway through, dealing with bumpers and how they're supposed to activate, that extended the game out a little bit longer than it would have been normally. And I think if we played properly, we might have enjoyed it even a little more. So hard to hold that against the game when you didn't read a basic rule. So that's Super Skill Pinnball 4K. Does that sound of interest, Sean? You have pinball fever?
I don't. Raquel does. Raquel wants at some point for us to buy a pinball machine. I was never a huge pinball fan. I was never particularly good at it. So,
I ran into Mike Primo out at Origins, and he is a big pinball fanatic.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a bunch of tables brought in as part of a charity event they were running there. And I got to play on them for a little bit. That's the most recent time I've played on a pinball table. And they were talking through some of the skill that's involved. The tables have more depth than you ever perceive. Like, I never perceived the depth. It just seemed fun and kind of tactile.
Right.
But there's a game there. There's a deeper game that true experts know how to play and can be really successful at.
Absolutely.
I don't know that level of depth. That being said, I think a game like this can help you appreciate it, and might be one worth scooping up for Raquel, because I think she would find it, if she wants a pinball, like this is a good way of kind of capturing that flavor without, dropping $2,000 on a pinball table. Where would you even put that in your house?
Nowhere. Eventually what I want is a gaming loft. That's what I want. When we move, I want to have a gaming loft.
Do you think you'll move anytime soon?
Probably not anytime super soon. So,
okay.
But just kind of a thought.
How long have you been in that house now?
We've been here since November 2013.
Wow.
Is that right? Yeah. 7 years next month.
Wow. Good chunk of time.
We're not mercurial like some people that are just strewn about from place to place. No one in particular I'm referring to.
I don't know who that could be.
Nope,
Anyway.
Nope.
That is Super Skill Pinball 4K, a perfect substitute for a pinball table. You heard it here from me. The other one I want to talk about is a game called Calico, co-published by AEG and Flat Out Games. Sean, have you heard of Calico?
I sure have, yeah.
Have you played Calico?
I have not. I'd probably be talking about it in recent plays if I had.
That's fair. So this was one where we were at Miniature Market, and we were looking through games to use a $5 Miniature Market gift card I had handy on. But by the way, our house is being taken over by games in a weird way. It's kind of exploding out of the shelves. Abby is. I was really heartened by this. This is kind of a separate whole deal, but we were looking through games and talking about, she doesn't want me to get rid of anything specifically, because I was like, well, Suro's there, and we bought the new Azul Summer Pavilion. Maybe we slot it in there. And she's like, I love Suro. I don't want to get rid of that one. And we were at the store. We were talking about Suro of the Seas as a possible purchase. But she saw this game, and it has adorable cat art on it. And then on the back of it, it said it's a puzzly tile laying game. And Abby was 100% hooked on that. And that is Calico. It is a puzzly tile laying game, incredibly thinky, but with very simple mechanics. It's the definition of streamlined, easy mechanics, difficult game. So how Calico works is you have these, I believe, hexagonal tiles with a color and a pattern. The color is, color and pattern. You care about both. The outside edge of each player board has colors and patterns as well. And you are going to, on your turn, from the tiles you have in hand, pick one and add it to somewhere on your board, and then pick a tile from kind of the public row to replace it. Very simple. Place, replace. Place, replace. Do that until your board is full. When everyone's board is full, the game is over. What makes this game extra tricky is how you score. So there are 3 different goal tiles that are on the board. One might be, hey, have everything around this be unique. You score, say, 10 points if all of the colors are unique or all of the patterns are unique, and you score 15 points if both the colors and patterns are unique. So 6 different colors, 6 different patterns. Not an easy thing to do, but pretty valuable points-wise if you can get it done. Then there are things that say have AAA, BBB. So basically 3 of one color, 3 of another color, 3 of one pattern, 3 of another pattern, or something along those lines. There's another version that's AAAAA, BBC, or something something close to that, where basically it's looking for 4 of one, 1 of one, and 1 of the other. There's a lot of these different patterns, basically, that you're trying to achieve. And the gap where the goals are meshes with other ones. So where you might have 3 of one color, 3 of another, some of those tiles are going to intersect with the have everything around this be unique one. In addition to scoring that way, if you build a color group, a group of like colors of 3, you get a button, which gives you bonus points at the end of the game. If you get all of the colors, you get a special rainbow button, which gives you even more bonus points. And then there are patterns, and the patterns are associated with different kitty cats at the start of the game. Each of the cats, by the way, has a bio in the back of the rulebook, which was super cool, little touch there. And the scoring markers for those cats are shaped like the cats. They're uniquely shaped cardboard tokens. The production on this, by the way, top-notch. Multi-layered player boards, really colorful, nice thick tiles. Excellent job. But the goals for the cats are things like get this pattern in a triangle of 3, or get this pattern in a group of 5 or more, or get this pattern in a line. And if you do that, great, you get the cat and you get some amount of bonus points for that. So it's that combination of looking for color groups, looking for pattern groups, looking for the goals on your board that make for a really thinky experience. And again, the core mechanics couldn't be simpler. Grab something from the middle, or place something, grab something from the middle to replace. But and it's certainly the level of player interaction is not high. You're hoping people don't take the one that you desperately need, and you can kind of look at what other people might need and maybe work around that and try and take from them. But you have such a hard puzzle yourself that you're not super well incentivized to do that. Really satisfying, has cool achievements in the back. Enjoyable. It's a heck yeah for Abby. I would give it a strong 5. Outside chance at a 6, but I'd say easy 5 just off of a couple of plays we've had so far. That one is really good. So I'm excited about, what's the game I backed on Kickstarter, Sean? Pacific Northwest, Cascadia, I think is the name of it. Also coming from this same company. Is that right?
I think so.
I think so
yeah.
too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? Which has a similar kind of tile placing mechanic. Equally beautiful production, it looks like. So in any case, keep your eye on this company if you like puzzly tile laying games, because Calico is excellent. And I have a feeling Cascadia will be too. So anyway, that's what I've been playing of late. I don't know, Calico, does that sound interesting to you?
Yeah, give it a shot. It sounds interesting.
It's a lighter game, but I think the puzzliness of it would be interesting to you.
Yeah, no, I definitely give it a shot. I think they have it at Empire. Not that I'm going to go play at Empire anytime soon, but no, sounds interesting.
All right, well, that's Calico, and that is what we've been playing this week. No news because we're not slaves to the format. But after the break, our review of Fort. Well, Sean, in these tricky times, our friends at Game Toppers want to let folks know that they're still open for business. They're still doing what they can to provide some at-home gaming goodness to help people upgrade their gaming experience while they're trapped at home. So Late Pledge Manager is open on Game Toppers. They have a lot of great bundles on their website, some of which might sell out, so check it out before it gets too late. Also, mats are going to be able to be shipped out relatively soon, so if that's something you've been looking for, hey, great. Thanks to Game Toppers for supporting the podcast and for supporting gamers looking to upgrade their gaming experience.
So go visit them at GameToppersLLC.com.
Sean Ramirez! Sean, help! The city's being overrun by baddies and all sorts of crazy villains.
It is I, Super Sean, here to assist. What is that, young citizen?
I need a board game to save the day. There's villains attacking the city.
Well, you've found one in Freedom 5. I was the 6th member that couldn't quite make the team, but the 5 of them will help you out for sure. And this board game, it's aces.
What are your powers, Super Sean? Are they powers of super selling out?
No, it's more like powers of just being overly critical of things, both games and people, latching on to their foibles and making sure that everyone knows about them. Those are my superpowers. So basically, I just kind of pester the villains and make them feel bad about themselves until they stop doing villainous things.
Sounds like Super Sean needs therapy.
No, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm having an incredible year.
So if you couldn't tell already, this is an ad for Freedom 5, a Sentinel Comics board game currently live on Kickstarter, live through November 13th, featuring Kickstarter exclusive content, pre-painted minis. This is a Dice Tower Essentials cooperative game designed by Richard Lanius and the Sadler brothers. It has, as of the time of the recording of this ad, well funded, more than quadrupled its fundraising goal and still climbing. If you want to get in on the action, you can find this live on Kickstarter now. Give it a check if you like minis, pre-painted minis, and you like awesome cooperative gameplay. You're going to love Freedom 5, a cooperative comic book adventure game.
And the easiest way to find this Kickstarter is simply to go to freedom5game.com. It will redirect you right to the Kickstarter page where you could find out much more about it.
But make sure you do it before November 13th, or you're going to be too late to save the day, like Super Sean.
Alex, that wasn't very good. This was just bad.
That's fine. We're going to keep it.
I'm pointing out your,
Oh, you're using your
shortfalls.
superpower. Wow, I'm
I'm using my superpower.
I'm pretty thick. That's why I'm not a superhero. Anyway, go to arcanewonders.com to learn more about Arcane Wonders' fantastic titles, and go to freedom5game.com if you want to check out the Freedom 5 Kickstarter. It's never a blunder when you game with Arcane Wonders. It's a schoolyard fight with squirt guns, skateboards, and oh so much more. But does this multi-use card game, one of the true hits of 2020, actually stand up, or is this fort just a house of cards? We'll tell you.
That was really clever. I really appreciated that, Alex.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic.
No, it's good. I know that's the default assumption you have to make, and I understand that, and I get that. You're not incorrect to go to that default assumption.
In fairness, this is one of the rare times this works. Like, I always come up with those little review intros on the fly, and this one just kind of came together in my mind in the moment.
Sure.
A lot of the other times, they're just patently ridiculous. This one, I think it worked too. Thanks, John. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate the rapid feedback.
All right, so we're talking about Fort, published by Leader Games, designed by Grant Rodiak, and art by Kyle Farron. So this is actually a re-implementation of a pretty small print run of a game on Kickstarter that Grant did called SPQR. It had a Roman theme, and now it's been rethemed with these neighborhood kids building forts. So let's talk briefly about how you play this game. This is a game where you're trying to score the most points at the end of the game, and the game end will typically trigger once you have built your fort to level 5, is it? Where one person's done that, or where the neighborhood deck runs out.
The park deck. The park deck, I think is what it's called.
Park deck. Yeah. Sorry, the park deck runs out. Okay. So what you're going to be doing on your turn is playing a certain number of cards from your hand. One main card, and on that card, there's typically a main action, a public action, and then a private action. All of the other players are able to follow, if they choose and are able to, the public action. These cards are all of different suits. So there's like glue, the glue suit, skateboard suit, the book suit, different suits. And so if I play a book card, and if Alex, you want to follow that action, you will have to discard a matching book card or a wild card from your hand. So I will play my card, and certain cards have multipliers on it, where if I boost the card with additional cards of that suit or a wild card, I'm going to get to take that action several times. Now, some of these actions are going to be to get resources. There are two main types of resources. There is pizza and there's toys, because that's what you want as a kid, pizza and toys. That sounds totally accurate. So those are the main resources, and there's some interesting restrictions. You could only ever have 5 of each. And if you would go above that, in one sense, you can't take the action. In another sense, it's a wasted action. There is a part on your player board called your pack, where you're able to store additional things there through card actions that will let you move it there. But that pack size is limited. It's basically 1 plus your fort level. So at the beginning of the game, it is 1. You can store 1 thing over there. Other actions you can take through card play is you can trash cards from your deck, basically remove them from the game entirely. And this is at its heart kind of a deck building game with some twist to it. And so having a lean, mean deck is definitely something you can consider. That's definitely one path to victory. But there's also some considerations. Maybe you do want a chunkier deck because maybe you have an end game scoring card that's going to reward you for having multiple cards of a particular type of suit. So some interesting trade-offs there. Now, some of the other things that the actions will do is they'll let you add cards from your hand to your lookout. Lookout is where you're going to be tucking the card underneath your player board, and whatever suits are displayed, you get to always be able to add those to your main action, or I guess your secondary action, if it has a multiplier. And that lookout is also limited by the size of your the level of your fort. You can have one initially, and then it's 1 plus the level of your fort whenever you increase it. Alex, why would we want to increase our fort size?
Well, it lets you hold more cards in your lookout. It also lets you hold more stuff in your backpack. Also, it's victory points. Also, It lets you pick perks, and it lets you pick secret rules. And also, it's super cool.
Yeah, so it's another action that you're going to take that's going to say increase your fort size, plus fort. And you have to pay a certain number of resources, and it starts off small with just a couple of resources, and then increases from level to level. You have to pay some amount of food, some amount of toys, pizza and toys, and then you can make up the difference with whatever you want. But yeah, like you indicated, you get progressively more points. It's not quite a geometric progression, but it's something similar to it. So the higher your fort level, the more points you'll have at the end of the game. But like you mentioned, there are made up rules that you can get. I believe that's your first fort increase. You're going to go through the made up rules that are randomly dealt out for that particular game. It's equal to the number of players plus 1. And you're going to pick that. You're going to look through them all, pick the one that you want, and put it down. That's going to be some sort of end game scoring. So it could be, like I said before, you score a point for every book that you have, and that's books in your deck, that's books in your lookout, etc. Or maybe you're scoring points for all of the pizza that you have at the end of the game, whether it's in your stuff, which is where you actually keep it, or if it's in your pack. So that's the first thing that you can get. And then the second upgrade is going to give you a shot at one of the perks, which is some kind of rule-breaking special ability, or it might be a one-use only thing. Like, for example, you can say, instead of playing a card this turn, I'm just going to discard this perk to build a fort, and no one can follow that. So that's pretty interesting. So for the other steps, there's no other benefit except for the final upgrade of your fort, which again, I mentioned is going to trigger the end game, but it's also going to give you the macaroni trophy. Is it a trophy?
Macaroni Castle, I think.
Macaroni Castle, which is worth an extra 4 points at the end of the game. So that's pretty interesting. I mentioned, some other actions you could take too. There are actions that will straight up give you points. There's a victory point track in the middle of the board, or the middle of the play area. So it might be, you could spend pizza for points. And there's a multiplier for that. So the more you can do that, the more pizza you have, the more points that you can get. So you can focus on a gameplay that's giving you points throughout the game. Maybe you're not building your fort up as much, opting to get points throughout the game. So those are kind of the actions that can be taken. And mentioned before, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more detail now, the following is very interesting. So it's following, and you think of games like Glory to Rome or Race for the Galaxy, where you're able to kind of piggyback off what the main action is. But again, you have to spend a card to be able to do it. You do not have the opportunity to add cards for a multiplier. You can't benefit from your cards that you have in your lookout. So it's just a little benefit. And in one sense, you want to be doing as much as possible because it's pretty efficient. All right. Now here's where things kind of take a left turn rules wise. So far, this sounds pretty typical. So at this point, once you've finished playing your card and everyone's had an opportunity to follow, any of the cards that you've played, you're going to get to discard. That's pretty normal. So any of the cards that you did not play, these are friends that you chose not to play with. So their feelings are kind of hurt. So they're not going to go to your discard pile, which is still part of your deck in a sense. They're going to go out in front of you in your yard, meaning that they're kind of left out and they're going to be open to get picked off by other players. Now, when it comes back to your turn, if no one's picked them off, they will go back to your discard pile. But it's a very interesting mechanic because once you've done that, and I should also point out that you start the game with 2 best friends, which are these starred cards. They will never go to your park. So even if you didn't play them, they'll still go to your discard pile because they're your best friends. They're going to put up with your mercurial nature. Little past reference there. So the next thing that you're going to do is you have to draft 1 card. Have to. So sometimes in deck builders, you're like, I don't want to clog up my deck. Here you have to. There are 3 face-up cards from the park deck. You can choose to take from them or from the top of the park blind, or you could take 1 card from somebody's yard. Very interesting. So at that point, you're going to reset. You're going to draw back up to your hand size, which is 5. It's the next player's turn. You'll have the opportunity to follow. You'll keep going around until you've either run out through the park deck or someone's built up to level 5 of their fort, and you add up the points, and whoever has the most points is the coolest kid on the block.
One other game end condition, you can also hit a certain point threshold.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you hit 25 points by getting points throughout the game, correct. That's the third way to end the game. Thank you, Alex. I forgot about that because that never occurred, but I can see where it might.
Oh yeah,
I've come close.
I've had it occur. I've absolutely in one of my games of this had that be the point that caused game end. Yep.
So Alex, what were your expectations of Fort? I'm sure this was a game that was somewhat on your radar.
What's interesting is I have kind of a split expectation. So I'll go before I ever played this. You hear every time you hear about a game and you hear it has really strong buzz. And then you hear this kind of combo of multi-use cards and playground kids as a theme. And then you hear it's leader games who has that kind of combo of doing something with a really cutesy theme in a sense with Root that had really deep, interesting mechanics and was a much heftier game. I think my expectation was this was going to be a pretty meaty game, possibly with some really cutesy art, but still had a lot of substance to it. So I was intrigued because certainly this is a company with a strong track record of interesting, deep games, even if, say, Root wasn't my favorite game. It has hooked a lot of people, and I think for good reason, because of its asymmetric play. I thought there would be some really interesting things mechanically going on with this game going in. And then as a weird other expectation, I played this online initially for my first play, well before we decided to review this. And on Tabletopia, this game looks like it's a beefy game. It's going to take up a big. It's going to be a table hog. It's going to take up a ton of space. There's a lot of components, a lot of things going on. And then you see the box for this, and it's absolutely not that. It's a relatively small game for what it has. So at least in terms of those expectations, I was shocked at how small the box was for this game. But also, yeah, kind of as a game, was expecting some really deep, asymmetric, really cutesy perhaps theme, but very, very deep gameplay. So that was my expectation going in.
Yeah, so Grant Rodiak is a designer that I've enjoyed quite a bit. I should point out also, I said earlier that this is a reimplementation of SPQR. That is a very heavy GMT war game. I meant it's actually SPQF because it was like Roman, but with forest animals. So the F gets placed in there for forest. So, but he did Cry Havoc. He did Hocus. You played Hocus, right?
I did play Hocus. Yeah.
It's kind of the poker. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. Imperious, which was like a Dune inspired game. So I like Grant Rodiak as a designer. So I had reasonably high expectations for this game, and I was aware of SPQF when it was on Kickstarter, and I was very close to pulling the trigger. And I don't know why I didn't, but that was certainly at a point when I wasn't going super crazy with Kickstarter still. So no, I saw that this was coming out. Leader Games has really been hitting it out of the park recently, and so it's got this kind of cutesy theme, and of course multi-use cards, although they're not super multi-use cards. There's like, it's there, and there's certainly it's there. But then deck builder and yeah, all of this, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to like this game. So those were my initial expectations.
Well, let's talk about rulebook. How easy was this game for you to learn Sean Ramirez, attorney at law?
Not too shabby. I think, oh, wait, no, I was misremembering. I watched Rodney's video. Rodney's video. Yeah, I watched Rodney's video because I did not own this game at first. I went to play it online on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator, I forget which one, with Ellie and Matt Walker. And Matt had played it previously. Ellie had not played it. And it was actually Ellie's idea. And I think Ellie didn't know we were going to be reviewing this. And he just messaged me one day. He's like, hey, do you want to try this out? I'm like, oh, perfect. Yes, absolutely. So I didn't have the physical copy didn't have the rule book to go through. I'm sure it's available on BGG. I'm not sure if it is or not. But I watched Rodney's video and we were kind of off to the races. Not too bad. What I will say is about 3 turns in to the game, I went and I bought it online.
Wow.
Of my first game. So I've since owned it. Raquel and I have played it a couple times, and I have gone through the rule book for this preparation. I don't think it would be a difficult game to learn from the rule book, and it's pretty good for referencing. The only thing I had difficulty referencing was, is that true? Maybe not referencing, but the hardest concept to wrap your head around is you must be able to take one of the 2 actions of the card that you play in full, and you can't supplement your play with additional cards if it will have no effect. In other words, you can't add extra cards so they get discarded to avoid having to put them in your yard.
Right.
It makes sense, but it was a little kind of hard to wrap your head around at first, especially where you play a card and you're like, oh, I can't complete this action in full. Oh, but I can complete the other actions. Like, for example, if it's requiring you to take 3 food or 3 pizza, and you only have room for 2 pizza, then you can't do that action. What about you, Alex? How'd you learn this game?
So I learned this game from our good buddy Aaron from Boards Alive and the Cult Classic Callback podcast. Cult Classic Callback? Is that right? Did I say
Cult
that
Classic
right?
Callback.
Okay, good. Oof.
I bet you their next episode's going to be on fire. Woo!
Woof. I hear there's some unfortunate looking but great sounding gentleman appearing on that show.
I'd go the other way around, but that's fine.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Anyway, Sean's guesting on that one. And also played it with Suzanne. And the one rule that was hardest to explain at that time was when you could use cards or not. And I think we had kind of either misplayed it slightly or it was confusing or whatever else. In reading it directly from the rulebook and kind of relearning it, because there was a months-long gap in between when I played it online and when I played the tabletop version with Abby, I learned it just fine from the rulebook. It's all pretty well clearly laid out. The one thing that I struggled with, and it's in the rule, you can find it, was if you're upgrading your fort, can you pay from stuff in your backpack, or does it have to be stuff that's in your stuff? And the answer is you can pay from both, and it makes sense that you could. It just took me a little bit to actually find that in the rulebook. It's clearly laid. It's clear in there. There's just like little things from time to time that I ran into. But as a whole, I think the rulebook does a great job of teaching what is not a super hard game, but has some tricky elements to it. It's not the most straightforward. So I thought they did a good job with that. Art and components, Sean.
Out of the park, so to speak. I think they hit it out of the park. Right? I think that's the full. No, I think it's great. The card quality is super good. I have heard online that you need to sleeve your cards, otherwise there's going to be chipping. I don't know. I sleeve my cards right away. So if that's the case, that's a little problematic. But the card quality, from what I can tell, is good. It has the 2-layered board. It's got cutouts for the pieces for your pizza and your food and your pack and etc. It's a little interesting. The lookout has this little tiny, I guess, a keyhole.
Yep.
So that the very first lookout you play, the symbol will poke out of, but that does nothing to help the subsequent ones. And it seemed a little unnecessary. Not a big deal.
I think the idea was cool, and in practice, you're probably just going to put them off to the side. It's a good reminder that the only purpose of those cards is to boost actions. You only care about the suit. So it reinforces the rule, but you're right. Practically speaking, it doesn't do much.
Nice little wood components for the pizza and the toys. They're nice screen printed. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really solid production, and it is this kind of cutesy art. Everything kind of looks like Muppets. The kids look like Muppet kids, kind of. I think it's a really big strength of this game.
I will give an extra shout out because I echo everything you said. I don't know about the card chipping issue. I heard it referenced somewhere on the guild as well. I don't know how that is or not. I'm not someone who sleeves my cards, and even if they chipped a little bit, I probably wouldn't notice enough to care. But that being said, I really enjoyed the player aids in this. These big full-size cards with all of the icons very clearly laid out. And there's a lot of icons in this game because of the nature of the different actions and different suits and things, but it's all very clearly laid out, nicely done. The art is beautiful. Kyle Farron's art is so stylized, cute, really great, really great. Cards are laid out very cleanly, iconography crisp and clear. It's, in most cases, pretty obvious what you're supposed to be doing, and it could take you a beat to figure out maybe some of the actions, but I'd say as a whole, for what the game's trying to communicate, it communicates it visually incredibly well. And the multi-layered player boards are just a reinforcement that whenever possible, I love having those in games. One of my favorite things in Scythe, it's one of my favorite things in Calico. It does that really well, and Fort does it really well too. I think for the size of box you get and for the cost of this game, the value in terms of the components and the production, it is truly top-notch. It's a great-looking game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, well, let's talk about gameplay. So, Alex, you like deck builders, generally speaking. Well, no, you're shaking your head. People can't see that.
It depends. Sorry, yeah, no, it's very good podcasting. So my favorite game of all time, Baseball Highlights 2045, has deck building elements, as you're so keen to point out. So absolutely. I do enjoy it as an element, and I think it tends to work really well in a lot of games. I wouldn't say it's my go-to. Like, I'm not a big Dominion fan, but I enjoy the mechanic. Yes.
Right. And I'd say this is a deck builder. It's not a game with deck building elements. I think it squarely is a deck builder. I really like any game that has a follow mechanic. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that generally speaking, I like games with follow mechanics. It can lead to some really clever decisions and interactions. One of our other favorite games, a ducal Boxcars Award winner, Motainai, which I will mention perhaps unfairly here a few more times, and Glory to Rome have that follow mechanic, and I tend to enjoy a good follow mechanic. Yep, agree with you there. Okay.
So I think I would describe this as my first Glory to Rome, somewhat. And I say that a little tongue in cheek, and that's not quite fair. I mean, it's certainly not a kid's version of that by any stretch. But it is a little bit, it is significantly more streamlined than, say, Glory to Rome, which is a 6 for me. It's certainly more streamlined than Motainai. I think it's closer in comparison to Glory to Rome than in Motainai. Both have a follow mechanic, but Glory to Rome does it a little bit closer to the way that Fort does it. But I think there's a lot of interesting choices here, and there's a lot of different ways to play out this game, strategy wise. I think there's different paths to victory here, although you're never going to hurt if you're building up your fort as quickly as possible. Have you seen games where someone could maybe not completely ignore their fort, but maybe only get the first two upgrades and still win or do very well?
In the second game I played with Abby, I built up my fort to one level. She was going for the completing her fort objective, and I was going more for points. I had something that allowed me to devour pizzas for points, and one that allowed me to trash cards for points, and I was motoring through those cards and just gobbling up points that way. There was also one that gave you points for lookout. I had a lot of point-gathering cards. I was one step behind her on my fort. So I think I was up one level past where you would need to be to get the kind of very basic perks. I think you probably can't win by not upgrading your fort. I think it's probably not feasible. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if you really thinned your deck and every turn you're getting, say, 3 points for some reason, maybe that's a way you could have some success. But I wasn't one that I could see. But no, I didn't have a game where I ignored my fort and did well. I did have a game where it wasn't my main focus and I won, though.
There is a made-up rule card that gives you an extra, I forget how many points it is, but if you only have like a level 2 fort, you'll get some amount of bonus points. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like that's the name of the game. So I think to some degree you do want to be at least at level 3, if not 4 or 5. And I'll point out too that when I talked about game end being triggered by someone building the fort to the last level, everybody gets an equal number of turns. So if I'm the first player and I end the game that way, everyone's going to get to go after me. But if I'm the last player, that's it. So, but yeah, I think you have to upgrade your fort to a certain extent. But I mean, would you agree that there are variable strategies otherwise in terms of how you're building your deck?
There are certainly a lot of ways to skin this cat. You can go with a thinner strategy where you're cycling through point cards more often, or cards that generate a lot of, say, pizzas or parks. You could store stuff in your backpack and copy stuff from your backpack into there. You could copy stuff from your opponent's backpack. Focus on trashing their cards and messing with their strategy a little bit while piling up points in different ways. You can consume goods for points. You can add cards to your lookout and use those to follow other people's actions and be super efficient that way. There are definitely cards that act in different ways. There's one of those cards that lets you privately upgrade your fort. Most of the times when you're able to upgrade your fort, you want to time that action so that other people can't follow, if possible.
Right.
There's a private upgrade your fort action that lets you not care about that. But the tricky decision, I think one of the most interesting decisions in this game is, what are you making available to your opponents? Are you making available that one card that is going to be super valuable? Are you playing a card that if your opponents follow that action, that sets them up for a really good move? So it's definitely a game with a good amount of interaction in that way, right? You're constantly stealing people from people's yards. You're constantly looking to follow. What was your initial question? I've completely forgotten. I just kind of went off on a tangent there.
Just that there are different ways to build your deck.
There are absolutely different ways to build your deck. You could go thinner. You could go thicker. Definitely different ways to build your deck. No doubt.
Yeah. So I had, and what makes it really interesting too, like I said, is this idea that you're taking some of your cards out of circulation at times because you're not playing them and they're going in your yard. So that, like I said, that does two things really. Number one, it makes those cards available for other people to snipe, to get from you, but it also might keep those cards from going back into your deck initially. So like it's a deck builder. So you're drawing back up at the end of your turn. And let's say I've got a very thin deck, like maybe 1 or 2 cards left. I draw 2, then I shuffle my discard pile, leaving out the cards in the yard. And so now they're not in rotation right away. And that can be problematic, or maybe that's something I want depending on how I've built my deck. But it's a hard decision because it's like, I got this one card that's really powerful, but I'm only going to wind up playing it. But all of the other cards in my hand are going to my yard now. I hope they don't get this other card that's also really powerful that I can't take advantage of this turn. I need to do a little setup for it. Boy, I hope someone doesn't take this away from me. Steal my buddy in the meantime. Really interesting, like really different. And we've kind of stopped talking about innovation on the show. That used to be gameplay innovation, and we're like, I don't know, whatever. But I would say that aspect of the game is really innovative. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, that what do you make available? What don't you make available? That idea of having the card you pick to play is not just important for the action it gives you, but for the actions you're making available to your opponents to follow and to potentially steal from you and have in their own deck. So, no, I would agree that part of it is definitely unique and interesting.
Yeah.
Sean, with this game, sometimes I think with the hobby and with games that we talk about on here, there's a problem we run into with experience, where if you've been in the hobby long enough and you play enough different games, it is harder and harder to surprise you, right? It's harder and harder to find something that is truly unique, and you always have these other points of comparison. This does this really great, but I don't know if it does these other parts, and I like this multi-use card game better. And sometimes it can be a bit of a sad thing. Like the depth of experience is fantastic and can really give you good, sharp, discerning judgments, but it also makes it hard sometimes to objectively judge a game on its own merits by itself.
Sure.
And what I run into with this game, with that specific issue, is knowing of a game like Motainai. Motainai, to me, has such unbelievably interesting decisions, so many diverse ways of winning, and so many moments where you have to pivot on the fly. And when you're playing, it plays in a short period of time. That's one of the things we haven't talked about with Fort, is for a game of this depth, it doesn't take that long to play. Those endgame conditions will happen sooner than you think. It doesn't outstay its welcome or come close to it, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree.
Motainai has that depth. It has that elegance. It has that follow mechanic, and some of that, what am I making available? Because whatever I choose as my action goes out to the floor, potentially gets scooped up as material. And maybe my opponent needs that little last piece of metal to craft something on top of it. That game's depth, that game's existence makes it harder for me to appreciate something like Fort on its own merits, which is completely unfair. Fort is far more widely available. Motainai is not as well known, and it's much harder to get into. I played Fort with Abby, and she enjoyed it. She didn't love it. Her reaction at the end of it was kind of in the more of the sure camp rather than the so more close to a 4. Close to, this game's interesting. She learned the multi-use cards from it, so kind of that My First Glory to Rome kind of piece of it. She liked the art. She got a sense of the strategy more on the second play than on the first. And it has me hopeful that someday, because she's starting to get to this point where she's starting to appreciate deeper and deeper games. As an example of this, Sean, early in the relationship, I showed her or tried to show her Gone Stone Clever. When that first came out, I stayed late at work playing that. And when I came home and tried to show it to her, because I thought it would be something, she plays Yahtzee on her phone from time to time, I'd be like, yeah, this is one that could be of interest. Like, check it out. It works like this. Had no interest. The other day, she was playing Yahtzee again. I was like, hey, let me show you Gons again. I think you can appreciate it more now that you've played some roll and rights and now that you know what this kind of game feels like. And she got it and she really enjoyed it. And so she's starting to get that sense of depth. And it's getting to a point where hopefully Motainai can be part of that rotation. Because if I can get past that teaching barrier, it's going to go great. But I got to wait to the right time. I got to wait to where that teach isn't going to suck so bad that it's going to sour her on the whole experience of the game. Her a sense of this is kind of my sense of this too. I like a lot of the individual parts. I like the components. I like the art. I think the mechanics have a lot of interesting decisions baked into it. And ultimately, it doesn't feel like there are enough divergent strategies to provide as much depth or interest as I'm looking for at all times. The game itself is enjoyable. It's not a, man, I need to play a best of 3 of this kind of enjoyable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know how fair that is to the game, because I think if you haven't played a multi-use card game before, this game is going to provide a lot of interesting decisions for you and a lot of different ways of reframing how you think of using cards. This is not a pure multi-use card game, to be clear. I call it multi-use because the cards can be used for their suit on the follow action. They can be used to boost other cards. They can be used for their top action and bottom action, or just one or the other. That's more what I'm thinking about in that sense. They can also be used as fodder for points. But it's not as true of a multi-use card game as, say, Glory to Rome or Motainai, where they have, I don't know. I'm getting in the weeds with this one, Sean. But the point being, did you have a similar reaction to this game?
Yeah, I mean, so it was interesting because it was scratching enough of an itch after 3 turns of it that I bought it online. And it's interesting because I feel like I know a lot more often nowadays, like right away, even sometimes during like a rules explanation. If someone's explaining the rules to the game to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I totally get where this is going. I think I'm going to really like this game. And I think that's kind of what you talk about with the depth of play experience, that you're able to make these connections. What I will say is this. I think that this is probably a better game in a vacuum than Motainai, in the sense that it's much more accessible. It's a much more accessible game than Motainai. Now, for me personally, Motainai is much better than this. And you're right. I think there is a bit of unfairness here. And also I would say again that this reminds me a little bit more of Glory to Rome because of the follow is a little bit more similar to Glory to Rome. I don't know that I would I say that this is a better game in a vacuum than Glory to Rome? No, I don't think so. The availability of Glory to Rome is what kills it. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I think most gamers, most collections would be well served by owning this game. And I don't know that I would say the same about Motainai. And I certainly wouldn't say the same about Glory to Rome unless it became much more widely available. I don't think everyone needs, I don't even know how much it's going for nowadays. Probably like $200, $250. I know there's some print and plays you can do. I think this is really good. And I think you and I are on the exact same page where if given the choice, I'm going to play a Chuddick game over this. And so while I enjoyed it and I was eager to buy it right away, I don't know if this is going to stick around in the collection. Raquel loves Motainai. Raquel loves Glory to Rome. Raquel loves innovation. I don't know. I don't see a situation where we would pull this out over any of those. As far as a deck builder, Mariah really likes Clank. Like she really likes Clank. No one around here really likes Dominion. Like I like Dominion, but Raquel doesn't like Dominion that much. I don't know if Mariah's ever played it. So the deck building here is good. It's not necessarily like a full-blown deck builder like a Dominion, but I really appreciate the innovation of the design of the yard. I think it's good. I think this game is really good, and I think we're doing it a disservice. So I would say, whatever our final scores are, when you're evaluating whether or not you should get this game, if for most people out there, add a 1 to our scores.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Hey, this is the first ever. Hey, okay, it's a ducal caveat. I don't know. It's a we're not old, but we're kind of old board game souls in a weird way, just from the sheer number of. It's sort of like being president, where you just have so many decisions, you get old super fast. If you have a board game podcast where you review a game every week, and you have a weekly game night where you have to play new stuff all the time, you get old super fast because you just have. How many games do you think you have learned over this past time we've been podcasting? Learned, not know right now, like not could teach, but
yeah, I'm easily 1,000, if not more.
I think it's close to 1,000, yeah, which is nuts to think about, just absolutely nuts. So I don't know how what you call that, but I think you need to give this game a boost because of that. Because the truth of the matter is, we keep mentioning Glory to Rome and Motainai. This game looks better than both of those. Has better components. Not saying that the components on the other two are terrible, but this game presents better. It's more accessible. It's easier to teach, and it does some really interesting things with deck building, with multi-use cards, with that park mechanic. Yeah, I don't know. I think if it felt like there were more different ways to play, in a sense, to play out a game, I'd worry about this game just kind of. It doesn't have the same level of replayability to me that a Motainai does, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with you, though. Like, my sense of it, too, is it's not the game's fault, but what gives me a little bit of pause on this, too, Sean, is Abby's assessment, I didn't even complete this thought, was it's really good, and it feels like there's something missing.
Okay.
She felt like for her, there was something missing with the decisions. She didn't feel like the decisions were quite interesting enough for her, was her assessment of the game as a whole.
Okay.
So that gives me some pause and has me think, I don't know, maybe the feelings aren't invalid, especially because we're kind of both feeling them simultaneously. I don't know. Maybe the guild can help us out with this one, or do we want to go into theme? Do we want to dig deep into theme?
Well, I think we've kind of addressed the thematic elements of this game. This idea that you care about food and toys or pizza and toys. If you don't play with your friends, there's a chance they could be enticed by some other neighborhood gang. Yeah, I think there's some interesting thematic elements here that definitely come through in the card play.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it doesn't. it does its theme well, and it's a unique theme. It's not a theme that you see a ton of out there. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that theme, and I think the art and look of the game support it. So no, I think it succeeds on theme. I wouldn't say it thrives on theme like a game like Fog of Love does, but it succeeds on theme.
Okay. On to the Guild, Alex.
Yep, Guild had a number of thoughts on this, both good and bad. Sylvain Lacroix says, I have to admit that I wasn't too sure about this one. I'm not a huge fan of Root, so the whole leader games buzz didn't hit me at all. However, I have to admit that after reading the rules, I was eager to try it out. First of all, the theme is fantastic, well represented in the game. One thing that I heard was that you could lose cards from your deck. Well, those friends, if you don't play with those friends, they'll go play with someone else. It's a small thing, but theme-wise, it's brilliant. Mechanically speaking, it uses the action-follow mechanism from a few games, like one of my favorites, Glory to Rome. I even joked that this game could have been my first Glory to Rome. Did you steal that from the Guild, Sean? Did you steal that from
I very well may have.
Man.
But it could also be a line of parallel thinking, because I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, he continues. In the end, the whole game is pretty interesting. Simple, but offers enough decisions and combos to make it fun for a gamer, yet accessible for someone more casual. Then again, I wouldn't consider it a gateway game either. In the end, Fort was one of the best surprises I had this year, a great game that I didn't have the chance to play enough, but I really look forward to playing more. I'll give it a high 5, really close to a 6, but I didn't play it enough yet to justify a 6.
And then BJ said, I was so juiced up to play this because I missed out on the Kickstarter for SPQF. While I absolutely loved the anthropomorphic Roman theme, when I heard they were rebranding it with kids building forts in the neighborhood, complete with lookouts and best friends, I was hooked. The gameplay did not disappoint either. We played it a half dozen times in the first week. I've heard the complaints that the gameplay is samey, yet in our plays we have seen multiple ways to win. I still think there's more to explore in the game, and the fantastic production really elevates it on my want to play now list. It is a solid 5 in my book, and I'm glad I own it. I should mention that we rate everything here on a 6-point scale, so a 5 and a 6 are both very good things.
Don Gilstrap says, I really enjoyed my plays of Fort so far. Hasn't seen a lot of repeat plays, but it's a fun twist on deck building with a little light engine building thrown in. Never played the original SPQF, but I really dig the theme of attracting friends to your house and stealing friends from your opponents.
All right, and then let's bring this down a bit with Philip Millman. Philip said, Fort for me fell flat, really flat. I love multi-use card games like Glory to Rome, Captains of the Gulf, and even the much maligned Import-Export. I really want to like Fort, but didn't due to the deck building didn't match up with multi-use cards with only 2 options. While I thought taking friend cards was clever, it wasn't enough for me to give it a 3.
I don't know if that means he's giving it a 3 or it wasn't enough to give it a 3, so he's giving it a 2.
Well, I thought taking friend cards was clever. It wasn't enough for me to give it a 3. So I guess that's a 2?
I guess. All right. I would maintain that that it just didn't have an interesting enough of a theme for Mr. Millman. I don't know. I think that's possible, at least. Anyway. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel it's odd to be more closer to Philip than I am to BJ, Dunn, and Sylvain here. I don't know. It's tricky, Sean.
So, but would you say it fell flat for you, or really flat?
No, I wouldn't. But I also wouldn't say it was a true surprise of the year and one of my favorites. Like, if I had to make a top 10 of 2020, I guess it might by default, right? I've only played so many games this year, but I don't know. If I looked at my new plays of things, I can come up with several that I liked better than this. I would say The Crew I like better than this. Calico. I'm just looking at games that are new plays for me since June. Sprawlopolis I liked better. Cascadia has a chance to be better than that. Sonora I think I liked better than this. Everdell, when I played online, I really enjoyed that. The Rival Networks really stuck out as a fun one. Didn't review Pendulum. I think Pendulum, for me, is about on par with this. Might edge it just slightly in terms of enjoyment. I'm not sure. It's one that I can see the merits of, and I had some amount of fun with. And I think it's those mental comparisons that are getting in the way. That Glory to Rome, that Matainai that gets in the way of it for me. Which, again, I know isn't fair. I'm acknowledging is not a fair thing to do. But it's just kind of, you have to, these are opinions at the end of the day, right? These are our opinions of the game. It's not the truth. I think the truth is somewhere in between best game of the year and I liked Motainai better. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle there. I don't know where exactly, though.
So what are you going to give it, Alex?
Well, am I going first?
Yeah, well, I thought that's what you were doing.
Oh, I didn't know we were on final thoughts. I mean, I guess we kind of are.
Yeah.
So final thoughts and rating. So looking at our scale, 6-point scale, which we use here at the Dukes of Dice, 1 being bad, bad, very bad, 6 being great, so great. Let's talk about 3 possible scores here, Sean. We have a 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. 4, a good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. 5, a great game will rarely turn down a play of it. And what's interesting is I might describe this game as closer to great than good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm more of a will play in the right situation than I am will rarely turn down a play of it. So I think for me, where I've settled on this one is 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. I think that's actually pretty perfect for where my thoughts are on this game. I think it does some really interesting things with deck building. That park mechanic is well integrated and unique. It incorporates multi-use cards. The depth of this one just isn't quite to where I want compared to some other favorites that do similar things. I think it's really well produced, and I think it's perhaps better than the score I'm giving it, and I absolutely understand why it's the hit, why it's been one of the hits of 2020. Just for me personally, it's in that 4 range. I don't think I'm going to get rid of it. Abby enjoyed it enough. It looks great. I'm not sure how many times I'll have played it come a year from now. I don't know if I'll have played this or Motainai more. And given that I haven't had anyone to play Motainai with, really, it would be a pretty big surprise if that was the case. I don't know. But again, I think this is a case of past hard-to-find games getting in the way of enjoyment of new, interesting games. I think if you have not tried Glory to Rome or Motainai, because they're maybe trickier to access, I think Fort is really, really great. Really great. Does a lot of cool things. I worry that over time the gameplay might feel samey and those multiple paths to victory might wear out their welcome. But I think for the price point you're paying, for the size of box, and for this game as a whole, the price is right, the game is right, and I think a 4 is where it belongs. So that's my long-winded final thoughts and score on this one, Sean. Where are you at?
Yeah, so looking at 3, game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. I can't say that the game is just okay. I just that doesn't feel right. So I think I'm right where you're at, Alex. It's a 4 for me. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy. I'm leaning more towards the 3 aspect of will play in the right situation, but I think maybe I'm kind of maybe I'm not including the full point here. Maybe this should be like a 4.5 once you've included the full point. No decimals though. You're allowed to, let me put it this way. You're allowed to include decimals if it's a handicap, if that makes sense.
Is this a case where it's a Sean score of a low 4, but you should really consider it as a high 4 or a low 5?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And I think it's good. So yeah, I'm gonna go with a 4. A good game, worth playing, just all the time, belongs in the duchy. I will be curious, like you, what this is gonna look like a year from now. I've tended to get rid of a lot of 4s from the collection. I still want them available at Empire or with buddies around here. But for the most part, I tend to only have 5s and 6s here in the collection. And I was pretty sure that this was going to be a 5 from the get-go, but yeah, that didn't quite get there.
Yeah, and I don't know. This one, I feel so conflicted on this one, Sean. So very conflicted. I feel like an old bitter man. Well, you should have tried Motainai back in my day. And yeah, I don't know.
There's a little bit of board game snobbery for both of us, I think.
Oh yeah.
We got to own that. I think that's definitely part of it.
What's interesting to me, Sean, and this is kind of a broader thought, I'm always amazed so it used to be when we reviewed games, we would play them at the same time. So we'd have the same play experiences. Played with the same groups of people, played at the different player counts, both at Empire, together when we were in person. Now, having been in St. Louis now for multiple years, the podcast it will be getting close to being more years apart than together.
Oh, wow.
I've been here 3 years.
Well, but not more episodes.
Not more. No. That's we got a long time for that. But almost as many years, which is interesting and strange to think about. But it is amazing that we ended up on so much the same page with this one for pretty much the same reasons. So I don't know. Maybe that speaks to the formative experiences of Matai and I and Glory to Rome, but I don't know. Anyway, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Fort. A reluctant 4 from both of us, I guess. But consider it a 5 if you haven't played any of the games we keep harping on and aren't board game snobs.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
Well, Sean, this is the Halloween episode of the Dukes of Dice, which we've, of course, very well prepared for, because our Dukes Double Take is
we
on...
never have.
We did it last year.
Yeah, we've done it 1 year.
We did it 1 year, and then we didn't pay any attention to it. So this is the Halloween episode. By the way, are you going trick-or-treating in COVID?
No.
Is that a thing? No, I guess not.
No, we're not. We're gonna dress up. We're gonna be the Bob's Burgers cast. Chewy's gonna be Louise. I'm gonna be Bob. Raquel's gonna be Linda, and hopefully Mariah will be Tina.
Nice. Okay. All right. I like it.
And we've got candy. We'll do candy. We'll figure something out. Or I don't know. I know there's some I've seen trunk and treat. I don't know. We'll see. But no, we're not going to do trick or treating.
Abby and I have not gotten costumes. We will be in Nashville, touring around that city over Halloween. So I don't think we'll be dressing up or doing much as far as that goes. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird year for that. Bummer.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about Horrified from episode 211, Universal Acclaim. You gave this one, and you extended this one. You said it a low 3. You said this IP seemed dated, that this game didn't really seem to have a place in your collection. You liked some of the different monsters, but there were cooperative games that did this stuff better, and you didn't see yourself playing it again. That's where you ended up. I gave this one a straight 3. I said a lot of good elements, but a lot of frustrating moments in the game that take away from interesting decisions. But I thought, compared to a lot of other 3s, there was a better chance that I would have played it in the year since. So that's where we ended up. Sean, I'm guessing this is not in your collection and you have not played it again or thought of it again.
No, not at all. And kind of taking a look at the IP issue again, it's weird. It's a weird theme. So for example, consider Unmatched from Restoration Games, right? So we reviewed the set that had Dracula, not the Universal Dracula, but the Bram Stoker's Dracula, had the Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde, and Sherlock and Watson, right? So older theme, right? All 19th century works of fiction, right? But there was something very classic about it, and at the same time the gameplay was fantastic with Unmatched. Here the gameplay didn't do it for me, and I don't know what it is. For whatever reason, 19th century literature feels classic, whereas 30s, 40s, and 50s Universal movie monsters just seems kind of kitschy, if that makes sense.
So I went to Universal Studios. I had an annual pass when I was living in LA. And around Halloween, they would have a walkthrough Universal Spooky Monsters kind of thing with some of those elements. And yeah, it just feels kind of kitschy and dated and not, I don't know. I agree with you. It's not a theme that grabs me. I thought it implemented it well. Again, I think the different monsters acted in different ways and it kind of had that, but it ultimately wasn't super interesting to me. And I don't know.
I think the biggest thing for me was there was an Abbott and Costello reference in there somewhere, or they show up in some way, shape, or form. And I watched a lot of Abbott and Costello movies as a kid, and I enjoyed them as a kid, but it was just really? Okay, all right, whatever. Sure, why not? This is what This is what modern audiences are clamoring for. So
Yeah, I don't know.
again, board game snob. What can I say?
Maybe. I don't know how much staying power this one has had. I'm curious. I don't know how sales have. It's not one that I see get to the table a lot. But then again, you're not in person. Like, you're not at Empire. It was really easy to gauge whether a game had staying power because you would see it hit the table multiple weeks in a row. You would see a game like Terraforming Mars come back again and again and again and again and again. And so I don't have as good of a gauge of that as I would. I just don't know how much this thing has hung on. I know it was really hot when it was released for a short period of time, but I don't know. Guild had some thoughts on this one, Sean.
Yeah.
Brett Maurer said, Horrified is a great entry-level co-op that I would teach to anyone. Everything about it is fun and easy to grasp, and I think it more than deserves a spot in the Gateway Game Hall of Fame due to its appealing theme and mechanisms. An easy 5 for me. Oof. Yeah, I kind of get it, but if I'm going to teach cooperative games, I don't know why I wouldn't just go for Pandemic or Forbidden Island. I don't know, Brett. I disagree, but I agree that the theme is engaging, and it's relatively easy to teach. I just think there's other things I would use to kind of get people into the hobby, into cooperative games. I'd use The Crew as an example of a cooperative game to use. I don't know about that.
So then Baker Mitchell says, I'd heard great things about the game when it came out and was excited to get another cooperative game for the family. Great theme, good components, just okay gameplay. It never developed the tension you want in a game like this. It also felt a little fiddly when moving the monsters. I want to give it a Ducal 4, but ultimately I think it's a 3.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I have not played it since the review, but this was definitely one of my favorite co-op experiences when we did. I really enjoyed the fact that you could dial up or dial down the puzzles by adding or subtracting monsters, and I liked how all of them played so differently. This game is screaming for more content, though. I would love a new monster or 3. We're just sourpusses today, Sean. Like,
I guess
we're down on things far more than the guild is. You don't have any new plays. Like, is the honeymoon officially over? Like, are you in a rut? You need to go to therapy with board games?
I might. No, I mean, I played an 18X game a couple weeks ago, and I've been playing a bunch of Magic, and I can talk more about Magic.
Please don't.
I've been upgrading all of my commander decks, and I don't know. Did I mention that I've hit Mythic twice now?
Congrats! I don't know. I don't know what that means.
It's the highest tier. It's the highest tier that you can get because there's ranked play. I hadn't done it for the entire time I've been doing it, and the last 2 seasons I've hit Mythic. So it's been, I don't know. This is definitely. Oh, did I mention that Mariah wants to play Warhammer 40K? Or at least try it.
Cool.
Yeah. So I actually purchased some new terrain that I'll be building and painting up pretty shortly here. But we're going to play like an old edition. So it's not. I like gaming. Gaming's always going to be a thing. But I think the pandemic has really made it difficult. I haven't been enjoying online gaming as much. So I miss going to Empire on a Wednesday night, and they've been doing some of that, but I'm just not comfortable going to Empire right now. And our New Mexico's numbers are crazy. A lot of our hospitals are at capacity or approaching capacity or over capacity. So I think things are going to be wild for the next couple weeks or months. And so, yeah, maybe here's what I'll do. All right, Alex, next week I'm going to have a new play. It's a GMT solo game.
Great. Okay. Excellent.
It's called The Hunted. Is that what it's called? I've already punched everything and I've clipped everything. The Hunted, the Twilight of German U-boats, I think is what it's called, where you're a German U-boat commandant during World War II. And there's a bit of a narrative aspect to it too, which is pretty interesting. So
I guess it's a new play. So
yeah.
Do you remember when we had 3 new plays each every week?
Plus a review game.
Week. Plus a review game. How did we do that?
I don't know. I don't know how I edited the podcast once a week on top of that. Like,
I am shocked you were able to maintain a relationship, because my relationship at the time was not maintainable, partly because of this. Man, how did that happen? I don't know.
I don't know. And I just had a baby.
Yeah.
Like, remember, Chewie was a couple months old.
Yeah, I know. It was man. The strange twists and turns of life, Sean. You know, we get wistful in the very last episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast.
Oh, yeah? Is this the final one?
This is the final one.
You know what? Yeah, you're right. This is it. That's just gonna be the new running joke. Every episode's the last episode.
You didn't have to call it out as a running joke. Now you've messed up the running joke. Dang it.
No, you can highlight a running joke.
This is exactly why this is the last episode of the Dukes of Dice.
Oh, for real this time, though.
For real, though. We definitely don't have a game already prepped to review 2 weeks from now.
And then one after that.
and then, do we have one after that?
Yeah. Well, probably. So next episode, more than likely, we're going to be reviewing Roman Roll.
I mean, more than I have the game. I hope we're reviewing that.
No. Well, I'm just saying, yeah, Roman Roll. And then the episode after that, very likely Tang Garden.
Oh, good. Okay. You don't have it yet, but seems
I don't
good.
have it yet, but we'll talk about that. So yeah, we've got stuff prepped, but it could all be for waste if this is really our final episode.
Look, sometime there's going to be this, just by the nature of time itself, Sean, there will be show notes that are prepped, but no Dukes to record the episode.
Ooh. Because like if a tree falls in the woods.
No,
no one's there to hear it.
It's because someday we'll be dead, but the show notes will live on.
Okay. Jeez.
Well, before we end this very final episode of the Dukes of Dice, let's talk about the rest of the best names for this episode. I would say, Sean, I love the participation on the Guild.
Yeah.
I mean, that almost had me consider doing an episode after this, the final episode of the Dukes of Dice.
But wasn't good enough.
I mean, look, really good efforts, everyone. But so the name father, Steve O'Rourke, came with Best Fiends, and there were all sorts of other iterations of Fiends, Best Fiends Forever, but I think he had the first one. So credit to the name father and all the other variants of that. I like the pun. Oh no, the other version of it was Beast Friends. So Best Fiends and Beast Friends. Anyway.
And then Michael Farnbrook suggested It's Been a Fortnight. Fortnight, of course, meaning 2 weeks, referencing the fort and fortnight, but also the fact that it's been a while since you and I have reviewed a game together on the show.
Yep.
Also, our fortnightly release schedule, so to speak.
Yeah. No, it's really clever. Nice name.
Yeah, good job.
Don Gilstrap with Pizza Party at Frankie's House, referencing Frankenstein, or Frankenstein, from Horrified, and, of course, the pizza all throughout Fort.
And then Nick Hayes suggested Wolfman's Got Nards, which is a fantastic Monster Squad reference. Have you seen Monster Squad, Alex?
I did not get the reference. Don't know it at all.
Yeah, it's this terrible movie from the 80s that I watched a billion times as a kid growing up, where all of the movie monsters come to town and they're going to blow up the world, and Van Helsing's heir is going to stop them. And it's a bunch of kids, these horror movie fan kids. They have to stop him. And there's a debate at whether or not Wolfman has nards, and it turns out that he indeed does.
Yep, fair enough. And then finally, Baker Mitchell with Remember the Monsters, referencing Remember the Alamo Fort, and referencing monsters in Horrified. Not a bad little name.
Very nice. All right, well, thank you again to the Guild. We always appreciate your wonderful suggestions.
And Sean, thank you for 6 years plus of wonderful podcasting. It's been a true pleasure.
Shut up. All right. That's going to do it then for episode 236. You didn't move the title down.
Those are the kinds of things that slip when you're closing up shop, Sean. No ghouls allowed from Jimmy DM90.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy DM90. Until next time. Well, no, never mind. Signing off for the final time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke You Never.
Thank you so much for listening to this, truly the final episode of the Dukes of Dice. Today's final episode was recorded in the Duchy on October 22nd, 2020. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Dushy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers LLC. You can find out more about Arcane Wonders at ArcaneWonders.com and learn all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on. Oh, I messed up the end. We'll see you back here never. Until then, game on.